So it was a few years ago I came across this in the discount bin at Walmart. Little surprised that it was in the discount bin. And I couldn't resist. I went ahead and bought it and I knew what I was buying. In fact, I had actually at least watched the second one on TV when it first aired. That dates me. But it's worth talking about. Its place in history, all the good. Admittedly, lots of bad. Welcome to my channel, KC. That's me, Carrie Chug, the Sledge Storyteller, here to talk about the wonderful world of storytelling, to open up discussions about how we can tell the best stories we can through movies, and hear everything good and bad from a storytelling standpoint. Now, it's the year 1979. The concept of live-action superheroes was still in the experimental stage. The 1950s Superman with George Reeves was primarily aimed at children. And of course, you have the 60s Batman series. It was meant to be a spoof. And just before Superman the movie came out, Filmation's Shazam came to Saturday mornings, operating on a Filmation-sized budget. And Marvel managed to get out a live-action Spider-Man TV series, which had high ratings but did not continue very long. Used very primitive special effects and is widely regarded now as not capturing the essence of the character. And then you have the more successful Incredible Hulk. It started around the same time, and for all its success, it didn't serve well as a blueprint for making live-action superhero shows, primarily over how well you can use faithful superhero costumes and props, because it was all about makeup. Now, shortly after the Hulk started, a slow-moving Doctor Strange would-be pilot came out, and nothing developed from that. Which brings us to these two Captain America would-be TV series pilots. So, the first TV movie gave Captain America a new origin story, with Reb Brown playing the son of the original Captain America, ultimately pitting him against a plot to set off a deadly neutron bomb. In the sequel, putting him up against Christopher Lee's Miguel, who unleashes an airborne chemical that accelerates the aging process. So, after that synopsis, there's the breakdown between those two. Just called Captain America and Captain America Death Too Soon. Now, in terms of physicality and by today's superhero casting standards, Reb Brown has a worthy physique, and maybe they make him get a little more ripped. Uh, but by late 70s standards, he was the next best thing to Lou Ferrigno, who played the Hulk. And, the man was jacked, and I can't help but imagine him here filling out a sledge suit. Now, acting talent, up to this point, Reb Brown mostly had small roles and bit parts in TV series. After Captain America, it was much the same, though. He was given the larger role in a B movie called You're the Mighty Hunter. I couldn't go longer than 20 minutes after starting to watch that. And then there's another B movie, Cage, which didn't work in elevating his or Lou Ferrigno's star power. His performances here, all the actors in these two TV movies deliver cringe-worthy lines at times, so his cheesy lines aren't necessarily on him. His performance of itself is passable, if not a safe portrayal of Steve Rogers and his ideals and heroism. Sometimes maybe a little too soft-spoken, but his physical qualifications, his approach to action, by 70s standards, okay, and his good nature and heroic initiatives make him a likable enough Steve Rogers. So these are TV movies, so we can't expect A-listers. And all through the 70s, Len Berman was a busy character actor, and as Dr. Simon Mills, he does what he can with his sometimes cringy dialogue. And, he regularly gives Steve Rogers good pep talk. Sometimes it tends to be a bit saccharine, but you can still believe in his resolve and zeal. But, one face from the 70s and 80s that I've always liked is Lance Legault. Just as Len Berman, he's regularly seen on TV, perhaps best known as Colonel Decker on the A-Team, playing, here he plays henchman to Steve Forrest, Lou Brackett. But he's a good actor with a commanding voice. Followed in Captain America, Death Too Soon, here we have William Lucky. Between him and the aforementioned Legault, one always seemed to follow the other. Besides this, Lucky played the first Army colonel chasing the A-Team as Colonel Lynch. But he's just as effective here. And well-known 70s and 80s actress Connie Selica performs well in Death Too Soon as a scientist helping in that capacity to snuff out the chemical agents sent out by Miguel, again played by Christopher Lee. And while this show didn't add anything to his prestige, it was still an upgrade seeing how his career was in shambles after his Dracula franchise with Hammer Studios had been reduced to schlock status. And I'm a bit surprised that his career didn't gain new traction after his bit as Bond villain Scaramanga in Man with the Golden Gun. This movie doesn't give Christopher much to work with as it feels it should, but you still get Christopher Lee as best as he can be given this movies. Because superhero movies then weren't taken as seriously as they are now, you're left wishing these movies had bigger budgets. It felt at times that budget constraints kept the threats that Cap were supposed to face from feeling that threatening. Couldn't give those things the needed precision. The first issue is obvious, the costume. The biggest head scratcher there is why in the first movie Cap had to have a completely different costume than the traditional one, which he finally put on at the very end. And the different one served no real narrative purpose in being different. And then, first MCU Captain America movie, they acknowledged the difficulty in making the cowl with white feathers on the sides look real in the real world. But I have to believe that a cowl with embroidered feathers on the side rather than ones that just flop out on the side would have worked better than to have them sticking out on a motorcycle helmet. I can't help but wonder what Cap's mask looked like underneath that helmet. Then the shield, I have to believe that everyone in the set crew were massively frustrated over having to work with a plexiglass shield, a very slow moving frisbee. I'm also bewildered that they made no effort to speed up the film to make it look like it had a little bit more momentum. Anybody who's played frisbee knows that dodging that would carry zero difficulty. And watching how much that thing shakes on Cap's motorcycle while driving it. Anyway, one fairly strange technology given to Cap in Death Too Soon is that his motorcycle had a pop-out glider. I'd gladly have sacrificed that bit and have Cap just drive to the big destination to go head-to-head with Miguel in the climax, all to free up enough budget money for an additional shield. Now, that the worst negative is out of the way, the action is decent 70s action, the plots are good enough with solid climaxes, and TV composers Mike Post and Pete Carpenter, they deliver as they'd be expected to. Look them up, you'll see some of the greatest TV themes ever under their names. So overall, at the very least, this is a guilty pleasure for me. At the very most, it's an interesting chapter in the evolution of superhero movies. There was good and bad to pick up from that helped the genre improve. That's my take on the Captain America TV movies as I see them. Thank you for watching. Agree, disagree, something I left out, please let me know in the comment section. If you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe or follow me on Instagram. The link to order slides number 1 and 2 is below the description. Available on both paper and digital formats. Digital, much lower cost. I don't know why the paper has to have such expensive shipping costs. Just know that they're in for maybe a little sticker shock if you go that route. Or you can order slides number 1 on Kindle in either format as well. But let's all look for civility amid all the bad news out there, social, political strife. pandemic, okay, it's picking up a little in the east. Let's try to handle this as we should, and hopefully it's going to taper off soon. But everyone, thank you again for watching. Be safe, and God bless.